like most people, 9/11 was a very traumatic experience for me, not only because of the tremendous loss of life overall, but I also had some individuals that I was very close to that I lost in that day. Prior to that, it was a regular business trip that I had the night before. I came in on a flight from the Midwest, and ironically, there was a young lady sitting next to me. It was her first time to New York, and I pointed out the lady in the harbor, the statue, because she was going to go sightseeing the next day. When I arose the next morning, my wife awakened me, and she told me, she says, "Honey, there's some major things happening." She said, "A plane just flew into the World Trade Center." And like every American, and I think most people across the world, we were gripped by the events for the next several hours, and we just sat there in disbelief. There was a young man who was a friend of my middle son, Benjamin, who had been a constant, he was like my fourth son. He was just a wonderful young man who'd come by all the time, and he had one of those effervescent smiles that just lit up a room, and his face was just, it's still seared in my memory. And I was really quite shaken when I heard that he had become a victim of 9/11, and it affected me profoundly, along with a coworker that I had at the time. I was working for the Mutual New York, and there was a coworker whose son was actually on the floor where the plane entered the building. And the gentleman who was a coworker of mine, he and I could not have been closer. And I had such respect for him because as a former professional athlete matriculating into the business world, you'll find that that's not an easy transition. And this gentleman embraced me with open arms, and he was like a big brother to me. And hearing that he had lost his son was just a traumatic experience. And it's something that to this day I get quite emotional over. I think the actions of Americans as a whole after 9/11 was unprecedented. You saw people cross political party lines, you saw them cross ethnic boundaries, you saw them cross social economic boundaries in order to unify. And I had never witnessed, being born in Greenville, South Carolina, the segregated South, I had never seen such a universal humanity coming together. Just had never witnessed that. And so my heart was just aglow when I saw that out of such a horrific tragedy, something good was coming out of it. If you're wise, you're able to harvest all of those emotions, all of those experiences, and because it is so all-encompassing, you can use it to motivate you to a higher calling, I would say. I felt compelled to give something back, to say thank you, and to show my appreciation for what happened. And one day I happened to be speaking to a friend of mine, and I said, I want to make a contribution to those heroes of 9/11. And it was suggested that maybe we'll do a golf tournament. No, been there, done that, got the T-shirt. Maybe a dinner. No, we need to do something that is commensurate with the event itself. And one of my deep, abiding things on my to-dos list was to walk across America, to see America up close and personal, to have that really personal contact with Americans. And I immediately thought, what better alignment could there be with such a daunting task than to have it associated to benefit the heroes of 9/11. And from that, a journey for 911 was born. When we launched at the George Washington Bridge, I can remember it was like Christmas or the 4th of July. It was an event. It was something that was filled with such excitement, support, and such just gravitas. It was amazing. And the entire day, from the walk from the George Washington Bridge over to Giant Stadium, which officially launched the Journey for 911, it was epic. It was really epic. But I can say that the entire journey was a continuation of that. And to be quite frank and honest with you, there was never a time, because people look at the enormity of walking across in America and they think you're going to do it all in one sitting. And it's like they say, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So we're just going to take it one step at a time, and we had minimum objectives where we would, I would demand that we would do 20 miles every day of the journey except for Saturday, which was a half a day. We would do 20 miles every day, and we met that objective throughout the entire journey except for one day. The most important thing to your question was that I met Americans who I would not have ordinarily met, who we had absolutely, positively nothing in common, that we bridged together and became brothers and sisters around a common goal, a common objective, a common table. And we'd sit down, we'd break bread together, we talked about the commonalities of our lives, and we talked about the commitment to eradicate the harshness of that tragedy by making the Journey for 911 a success. And I can tell you this, I've won a Super Bowl. I've kind of done some things that are pretty remarkable in my estimation. None more important and none more sustaining than a Journey for 911. I get a little emotional when I talk about it, because when you grow up in an environment where you are considered less than, you understand the importance of people who stop and take a moment out of their busy schedule to have a positive impact in your life. Those heroes, those first responders had a tremendous need, and at that time, their needs were going unheard. They were going unaddressed. And again, thanks to a plethora of wonderful, outstanding heroes. It wasn't just George Martin. I may have been the face of a Journey for 911, but that's the face of 1,000 others that supported me. We went to Washington. We went and talked to politicians. We talked to school boards. We did a host of things to call attention to the plight of those wonderful heroes. And I can tell you that I've done nothing greater than that in my life, because it called attention to something that was desperately needed, and eventually help came by virtue of just many, many people who heard the cries and the plight of those wonderful 9/11 heroes. There was a lot of skepticism, Jay, in my psyche before I started because of my upbringing. And I thought for certain, I would have bet my life on it. As a matter of fact, I guess I did bet my life on it, that at some point in time, some ugliness was going to rear its head, and we would be faced with a lot of the ugliness that we see today, unfortunately. It never happened. Not once, not ever. One day, a pickup truck pulls up behind us, and it had, at that time, the ubiquitous gun rack in the back of the window with this, arsenal stacked up there, and this camouflage truck. And I consider myself a big guy. I'm 6'4", I'm 260 pounds, and out steps a guy who's got to be 6'7", 6'8", and he's every bit of 300 pounds. And he's got on these bib overalls, and he's got on this hat that looks like he's had it on since birth. And he gets out of the car and he starts walking toward us. And I, out of abundance of caution, I tell security, hey, security, let's be on our guard here, because we don't want, anything to get out of control. And so I walk up to the guy and I say, I'll diffuse the situation by extending my hand and welcoming him, which I did. And I extended my hand to him and I said, hi, I'm George Martin from A Journey for 911. And he slaps my hand out of the way. And I near saw myself at that point in time, Jay, but I composed myself, and the guy came at me and he gave me a big bear hug. And as big as I am, he lifted me off the ground and he said, I don't want a handshake, I want a hug. He says, I've been watching you guys on television, I've been hearing about this, and I had to come out and meet you, Mr. Martin. He says, I wanted to contribute to the journey. He says, I want to invite you to my restaurant, it's just down the road. And Jay, I was almost brought to tears, because for the next 3 days, we ate together, we hung out together, and except for the difference in our skin color, we were brothers through and through. And that to me is a hallmark of A Journey for 911 out on the road. I ask the rhetorical question sometimes, how would you feel if tragedy impacted you, your life, or your family? Wouldn't you want someone to take time out of their busy schedule to help you in your plight in life? Wouldn't you want someone to show some generosity to you if a family member died, or if someone was gravely sick, or, God forbid, if the worst happened to you? Wouldn't you want someone to hear your story, to take heed and respond accordingly? Invariably, young people hear that and they understand. They understand that the kindness of others is probably the best currency that one can ever display or give. And that cycle of giving should be continuous. That if I take the time out of my schedule to give out of my heart generously to someone else, the way you repay me is to do the same thing to someone else. And I say that to this day, and I still meet people who I will sign an autograph, give a hat, give a picture, take a photograph, and I always tell them that, do unto others as you would like someone to do unto you. Again, it's scriptural, it's biblical, but I think it's profound, and that's the kind of lesson that we as adults or as the older generation have to convey to the generations that are behind us.